Hi, Maurice.
Hi, Robert.
Good. Yeah, I was waiting for you to come on. Hi, President.
Hi, Robert.
Good. Yes.
Is my video clear?
Yes, it's clear. Maurice, will you put your video?
Hello.
So I have 300 members waiting. I would want to admit them, but I wanted you to be comfortable so that we start.
Okay, so far, how many guys have confirmed?
1,700.
Okay.
So I think what we do, if you allow, I can admit I have about 350. I can admit all of them, and then we start.
Robert, do you have quorum?
Yes, Maurice, we have, so far we have 470 members who have joined, and we're expecting about 1,000 to join us.
Oh, okay. Then I think let's just give them a few minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
document. Let's go to desktop. This one. Okay.
It's ready to be shared.
Ngoja now. I want to edit here. Then no, I want to edit because you are
Okay, good morning, everyone. I hope all of us, you can hear me. We were waiting for members to join in. We had a record of over 1,700 who had expressed interest to join us. However, for this platform, I think we can only accommodate 1,000 people. So out of the 1,000, so far we have about 680, 82, 83 participants at the moment, which is also a very good number. And I think also a good quorum for us to begin this particular presentation that we have prepared for you. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Maurice Okoth. I'm the chairman of the Education and Research Committee. The Education and Research Committee organizes for trainings, CPD seminars, such as this one, other than running the examination calendar for the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya. As we begin, I think I'm going to invite one of us from the Secretariat, Mr. Robert Koech, who is going to start us off with a word of prayer. Thereafter, then we shall embark on our program, and I'll update you on how the program is going to be run from now until the end of it at around 1 p.m. So, Robert.
Thank you, Maurice.
And I've seen a comment from somebody that there's an echo from my end. Is that the case?
I can hear you loud and clear.
So then,
yeah.
And then I think it's that person that his connection has an issue.
Okay.
All right, please take us, assist us to pray.
Okay. Let's all believe and pray. Our loving Father, we come before your presence this morning, thanksgiving in our hearts. Thank you, Lord, for convening us for this important virtual meeting as we try to understand the issue of land title conversion in Kenya. Lord, we ask that you may start with us this meeting, progress with us, give us wisdom, so that we may be able to give justice to this topic. Be with us as we begin until we finalize. We shall be careful to return thanks back to you. For this we pray thanksgiving in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you very much, Robert. We feel very blessed, and we hope that, and this particular presentation, which is of interest to our members, will be able to get the best out of it. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya webinar on understanding the line title conversion in Kenya. This is something that is of public interest. As you're all aware, we have received notices from the Ministry of Lands that is trying to make the public understand why this conversion is happening at this point and how it's going to happen and at what stage we are at the moment. And again, of course, most importantly, how it's going to affect titles, the existing ones and the ones that will come in future. But however, before I go into it, I'd like to just welcome our CEO to say hi, and also Abraham, although they will reserve their comments till later, so that you can just begin with the program. And as CEO is coming in, I'm also reminded that this particular webinar is also being broadcast live on YouTube. So if you can just spread the word to those of us who will not be able to join in, to just log on to our YouTube channel, that is the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya, so that they'll be able to participate and they can ask their questions. They can ask their questions online. Okay, so Rose, you can say hi as Abraham also prepares to say hi. Karibu.
Thank you very much, Maurice, our chairperson, education and research here at the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya. I think I've been told to say hi, and I just want to say good morning, members, and you're most welcome. I reserve my comments for the next minute when I'll be invited. We are proud and we feel delighted that you're here with us, and you're most welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, CEO. Abraham, you can say hi to members.
Thank you, Maurice. Members of the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya, I might say good morning and welcome to this webinar. As the CEO has said, I think as a council, we are very excited. I can see the numbers going up now at 750, a very high turnout. This is a very important topic because it touches on what we do every day, the questions you have from clients and people you serve. So I think it's a very good session to provide resource and questions you may have to all of us. So I'll not say much. I hand it over back to Maurice. Take it away. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a program that was sent out, and I would like us to make a small change in our program. And before we have the address from our chief guest, I would like to, first of all, just to have an introductory presentation from the Ministry of Lands. We have 3 resource persons who've joined and who are going to assist in this particular presentation, so that they take us through as we begin to understand the issue at hand. Thereafter, we have received several questions through our various platforms, which you can also, put forth to the presenters. And then, as we also begin the plenary session, then of course we are all now aligned. Then of course at that point, I think our CS will be ready to address the group. So I'd like to welcome either Esther or Mr. Nyandoro, who are all representatives of the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning. Esther Ogega is the Land Secretary. David Nyandoro is our Chief Land Registrar, and Joseph Nanzala is the Assistant Director at the Department of Survey. So if the presentation can be can be shared, Robert?
We start with the speech. Just a minute. Hello, Chair.
Yes.
We could request that first of all, we make a presentation on what the CS wanted to address.
Okay.
Then we, through our land secretary.
Yes.
Then after that, we can share the presentation. I think it would be prudent that first of all, we are able to get from the top leadership exactly on the invitation, because they are prepared for that.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. David Nyandoro. I would like to welcome our Lands Secretary, Madam Esther Ogega. You can just take us through what you have for us. Thank you. Secretary, please help with Esther, if she's ready. Robert? Hello. Hello,
Yes,
Robert?
Maurice, yeah, you're trying to
Connect.
Esther, if you can please unmute.
Hello, Chair. Hello.
Yes, Mr. Nyandoro.
Kindly, we are asking that they check from that end. Esther is muted.
Robert?
Yes.
Please assist.
Yes.
I think there must be a problem from Esther's side. We are not able to get through to her. Okay, Mr. Nyandoro.
Yes.
What do you just do? Do we still keep on waiting for her, or you can do your presentation as we wait for her?
What we'll do?
Yes,
We
please.
are not very far from each other.
Okay.
I'll give her my PC.
Yes.
Yeah, that way we can progress and move ahead.
Oh, okay. So you are reaching out to her?
She cannot unmute herself.
Okay.
She's ready. Yeah?
I'm ready now. I'll use Mr.
Ah,
Nyam.
good. Thank you. Hi, Esther.
Hi.
Sorry for that, but welcome.
Yes.
We are here to listen to the ministry.
Yes.
And you're welcome to do your opening remarks on behalf of your colleagues before we proceed with the presentation that they have as we proceed with with the webinar. Karibu sana, Esther.
Thank you very much, Chairman. My name is Esther Ogega, Secretary Lance. I appear here wearing two hats. First of all, I'm here to make remarks on behalf of the Cabinet Secretary, Madam Farida Karone, who has sent her apologies. She's actually attending another function. She has sent her greetings to all of you. I'm also here as a member of ISK. I'm very proud to be one of you. And I wish to welcome all the members and say good morning to all of you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. The Cabinet Secretary wanted very much to be here, but due to exigencies of work, she's unable to attend. Let me introduce the members from the ministry, my colleagues, Mr. Nyandoro, the Acting Chief Land Registrar, and we also have Mr. Nanzala, Assistant Director of Survey, and we are also with Dr. Victor Ouno, the Director of Public Communications in the ministry, and also personal assistant to the CS. So I proceed with the speech by the Cabinet Secretary as directed. The Chief Executive Officer, members of the ISK, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I take this opportunity to thank the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya for inviting me to this meeting. Land issues are very sensitive in Kenya, and I understand the kind of emotions that it evokes. In recognition of these facts, the ministry is making deliberate efforts to enhance accountability, transparency, and efficiency in land administration and management. We launched our strategic plan last year. This strategic plan is founded on 4 key pillars: digitalization, national titling, policy, legal and institutional reforms, and decentralization. These strategic directions are geared towards improving service delivery. Digitalization is the ministry's priority project. This program is anchored on legal reforms. We proposed amendments to business laws under what is now cited as the Business Laws Amendment Act 2020 to introduce electronic land transactions and allow for re-engineering of business processes. These reforms are in tandem with Article 60 of the Constitution that provides for sustainable land use and management. Attempts to digitalize the land transactions have been made by successive regimes since 1995. The starting point in this program was the development of the cadastre. It is at this point in our journey towards digitalization of Nairobi Registration Unit that the need to migrate to the new registration regime arose. The Land Registration Act 2020 was enacted pursuant to Article 68 of the Constitution, which provides for revision, consolidation, and rationalization of the existing land laws. The Act repealed the Indian Transfer of Property Act of 1882, the Government Lands Act, Cap 280, the Registration of Titles Act, Cap 281, the Land Titles Act, Cap 282, and the Registered Land Act, Cap 300. Each of these pieces of legislation created its own register, making land registration complex. The confusion occasioned by these legal regimes opened a window of fraud. The Land Registration Act seeks to consolidate the repealed registration regimes by way of a conversion process. This is envisaged under Section 6 of the Act and the Land Registration Units Order 2017. Section 6 of the Act provides for the establishment of registration units divided into registration sections or blocks. Parcels in each registration section or block are to be numbered consecutively. The conversion process entails preparation of cadastral maps together with a conversion list indicating the new and the old numbers for each parcels of land within the registration unit or registration section block and their corresponding acreage. Section 7 and 15 provide for the maintenance of cadastral maps for every registration section. The Land Registration, in bracket, Registration Units Order 2017, prescribes the migration process to the new registration system. Regulation 4 requires publication of the cadastral maps together with a conversion list in the Kenya Gazette and 2 daily newspapers of nationwide circulation. The ministry has commenced the migration process for land parcels within the Nairobi Registration Unit. We have prepared and published cadastral maps and conversion lists for a number of registration blocks or sections. The ministry is preparing the cadastral maps and conversion lists for the remaining registration sections or blocks for publication. Once this process is complete in Nairobi, we shall embark on converting title deeds in the metropolis. The confusion occasioned by the different regimes had become a breeding ground for fraud, delays in service delivery, centralization of land services, and threats to the right to property. The conversion process was supposed to be completed in 2017. However, regulations to operationalize the act were approved by Parliament in 2017. The ministry started developing the Nairobi cadastre in 2018 to allow for a seamless transition to the new legal regime. We have digitized all our cadastral maps and our data are tamper-proof. The Land Registration Act of 2012 at Section 6, as read with paragraph 4 to 9, of the Land Registration in bracket Registration Units Order 2017 outlines the conversion procedure. The conversion process entails the following. Number 1, preparation of cadastral maps together with a conversion list indicating new and old numbers for parcels of land within a registration unit or registration section, block, and their corresponding acreages. Number 2, publication of the cadastral maps together with a conversion list in the Kenya Gazette and 2 daily newspapers of nationwide circulation. Number 3, an accompanying notice specifying a date to be the date after which the register shall be open to the public for transactions or dealings within the registration unit. This requirement is captured in Regulation 4, Section 4 of the Land Registration Units Order of 2017. Number 4, lodging and consideration of complaints within 30 days of the receipt. Number 5, closure of old registers and commencement of transactions in the new register. And number 6, application for replacement of title documents in the closed registers. The cancellation and replacement will migrate the parcels to the new regime while retaining the ownership, size, and the other interests registered against the respective titles. This conversion means that the registry index maps, that is commonly known as RIMs, will be fully used as registration instruments, replacing the deed plans. Boundaries will not be affected because these RIMs are generated from survey plans. Both RIMs and survey plans are accessible to landowners on request for verification of boundary details at the Survey of Kenya, Ruaraka. The use of RIMs will minimize fraud, unlike a deed plan that captures data on one specific parcel. A registry index map displays all land parcels within an area. It is therefore easy to note changes or alterations on an RIM. Ladies and gentlemen, the ministry has put in place a number of measures to ensure accountability and enhance public confidence in the exercise. By 1, we have developed a catalog of frequently asked questions, which are posted on our website, www.lands.go.ke. The ministry has also put up a help desk at Athi House to address concerns or complaints. The ministry also conducted media campaigns for 1 week to sensitize Kenyans on this process. We have also sponsored our social media platforms to reach out to more stakeholders. The ministry, in conjunction with the Law Society of Kenya, is developing a manual that will offer guidelines on this entire process. So far, a zero draft has been developed. In recognition of the public interest in the process, we have always created time to discuss this process during our stakeholder engagement sessions on NLIMS. Surveyors will now be expected to operate within the new law. We urge you to sensitize your clients on the Act and the regulations. I thank you once again for giving me this opportunity, and I look forward to more engagements on land issues in this country. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, that is the speech by the Cabinet Secretary. So as you had stated, I will allow Mr. Nyandoro to proceed with the presentation. After that, we shall have another verbal presentation by Mr. Nanzala about the cadastre. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Esther. Thank you for reading the speech from the CS, and we are hoping that before this presentation, the webinar ends, hopefully she will have a chance to join and say hi to the participants. I'll give this chance now to Mr. Nyandoro to make a presentation. I think she is just about sharing a screen to take us through the land conversion process. Okay, there it is. So I hope it's visible for everyone. Okay, Mr. Nyandoro, karibu sana. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. First and foremost, I want to send my gratitude to RSK. I think this is my third time I'm doing a presentation for ISK. And that has given us a closer working relationship. My presentation today, as already alluded in the introductory bit, is about land conversion and the migration of titles to the new land registration regime. In my presentation, if I give you what I have the introductory part, then I go to the enabling provisions. Chairman, I'm getting echoes. I will go to the enabling provisions, then the conversion itself, and that will probably bring an end to the presentation. As you are all aware, prior to the Constitution 2010, in our independent constitution, we had several pieces of registrations or land laws that were governing matters dealing with the registration of land. These registrations, if you look at, they were based on our issue of pre-independence. In total, we are at about 6 pieces of registration, starting with the Indian Transfer of Property Act of 1882, the Government Land Act, Cap 280, Registration of Titles Act, Cap 281, Land Titles Act, Cap 282, the Registered Land Act, Cap 300, and actually we can add Registration of Documents Act. If you look at these pieces of registration, they go back to history, whereby you will find that prior to independence, when Kenya became a British colony, there was an understanding between the British government then and the Sultanate of Zanzibar to allow the Sultanate control the 10 coastal mile strip. In that, what produced the titles that now we gave prior to the current regime, which were the Land Titles Act. These are titles you find in our coastal region. We also can anchor the Government Land Act to the Crown Land Ordinance, which allowed the Crown to own parcels in the colony, particularly Kenya. We also add the Registration of Titles Act, which actually also emanated from what we call now what came to be known as the White Islands. All these pieces of registration gave us to various types of titles. Yes. Yeah, yes. Yeah. So in that regard, so you realize, sorry, Chair, in that regard, you realize that due to these various registrations, then we did not have a unified form of registering property in Kenya. Thus created, in 1982 particularly, there was an agitation that most Kenyans did not ascribe to any of the titles that were issued, which brought about the Registered Land Act Cap 300, where actually we have famous title deeds. And you can also remember in that constitution, we do not have a specific muted. Okay, sorry, Chair, I was muted from my side, sorry. So as I was saying, and
Mr. Nyandoro, is there a reason why you have brought down, Mr. Nyandoro, sorry for interrupting you. Is there a reason why the presentation you've stopped sharing the screen?
No, I think there is a problem.
Yeah, because okay.
I think there is a problem because even me, I'm going on and off.
Oh, okay.
Chair. Hello.
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 Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes. I think I'm also going off and on. I
okay,
don't know
is there a way that you can
from my side?
You can share. Robert, can you assist? Do you have the presentation with you so that you can share and help Mr. Nyandoro with sharing the slides?
Yeah, Chair, can I proceed as he's connecting?
Okay, please proceed as he's connecting.
Yeah, so under Article 68, so we were to rationalize the existing land laws, harmonize them, and then come with a unified form of registration, which actually gave rise to the Land Registration Act number 3 of 2012. And in that act of 2012, we were chair supposed to have done a number of things. Among them, we were supposed to have migrated within a period of 5 years from the enactment of the Act in 2012 to the new registration regime. However, it never happened because of a number of reasons. One of them, you are aware that we only passed the land registration unit order in 2017 in order to operationalize Section 6, to be specific, of the Land Registration Act. So in that, sorry, Chairman, I'm trying to check my notes. So in that order, you could see that the actually chapter 6, we have public land, private land, and community land. Then in this case, in order to operationalize, we were to come up with the regulations. And of course, there was need, particularly when you look at Section 6, Section 7, and Section 15 of the Land Registration Act, that one of the key elements in that was that we needed to have a cadastre for us to be able to migrate. The Land Registration Act per se repealed all the other existing pieces of registration that existed. So all this time we have been actually operating through what I could say the savings and transitional provisions that are provided in sections 104, 105, all the way up to 109 of the Land Registration Act. Again, you could realize under section 105, in transiting to the new registration regime, it only provides for only 2 types of titles. That is the certificate of title or certificate of lease. As of now, you are aware in our regimes, then before we had title deeds, we had grants, we had indentures, and all these are actually required that now they must be moved to be aligned with the new Land Registration Act, which substituted the previous pieces of registration. Section 106, particularly in transitional provisions on the rights and the liabilities or remedies of the parties. I want to say that in terms of moving, there is a procedure and provisions that were laid. And among the things that were to be addressed were that the rights that existed in the old registration regimes, particularly the rights affecting ownership, acreages, user, were to also migrate to the new registration regime. Ideally meaning no person was supposed to lose his rights in the process of conversion or migration. And where properties at liabilities such as mortgages and charges, so these were also to be reflected in the new land register. As you are aware, the regulations were published, and then in 2017, we had the land registration unit order, which actually gave out the guidelines on how to do conversion. It is on these premises that I'll want Chair to look at what I will term as the conversion procedure. The order, as I've said, that is the land registration unit order, was actually approved by Parliament on 22nd November 2017, giving now leeway for the process of conversion. Ideally, this order was to give effect to Article 68 and the Section 6 of the Land Registration Act. Section 6 per se sets out the land registration units that all parcels now in Kenya were to be registered in the units. And actually, a registry could compose a unit, and at the same time, you could find that a county could compose a unit. Now, in terms of the creation of this registration unit is what was to give now way for purposes of effecting conversion per se. You could not convert if we had not created the registration units, because our various registrations, if you remember, under the Government Land Act and the Registration Titles Act, we had what we call land reference numbers. And in our new conversion, we are told we are to start with registration units, sections, and then if there is any blocks or numbers. This was the order provided. Then once the registration units were created, we had now to move on to the process. Remember, majority or first of Kenya properties requires that they be geo-referenced. As I talk today, the cadastre for Nairobi is ready. And cadastre gave us also a leeway to prepare the conversion list. And this conversion list comprised of the block numbers for Nairobi, the area, the old and the new numbers. You could also note that on 30th December 2020, our Cabinet Secretary published the first 19 blocks that went through the process of conversion from the old regime to the new land regime. Actually, that is in line with the land registration unit order of 2017 that require that once the cadastre is done by the Directorate of Survey and a conversion list is prepared, then it is passed to the Chief Land Registrar, who in turn will now forward to the Cabinet Secretary to have it published within a period of 4 months. Another critical thing is that in terms of the publication, we are supposed to do it in the Kenya Gazette and any 2 local dailies of nationwide coverage. That or letters taken place, but I want to say that what we have not covered is not fully the whole of Nairobi, because in terms of gazettement, we are doing it block by block. In the process again of conversion, it also provides for a procedure of an aggrieved party on how they will actually have 2 things. One is to lodge a complaint, and in case we don't have a complaint, then once the period of 90 days is over, then there is an issue of now surrender. And I think this is one thing that most of us were wondering, why are we surrendering or our titles? It is a requirement that you cannot convert and then proceed to use the old title, which was issued under a different regime. So ideally, in the process of conversion, we are only replacing, we are only changing the title. So ideally, in terms of the complaint, then from the date of the Gazette should be within 90 days. The application form RL 96, which we use for the surrender, there is an application form RL 67 for those who could want to lodge a caution chair. We also have now at that point, Chair, that there at the point we are converting at the expiry of the 90 days from the date of the gazettement, then the old land registers must be closed and the new registers opened. That creates way for closure and the migration of records to the new land regime. We have in paragraph 9 of the land registration order of 2017 clearly provides for a basis on how this final process would be done. And if you allow me, Chair, to be precise, it allows the registrar to publish in at least 2 newspapers of nationwide circulation and announce on the radio stations and give notices to the registered landowners that now they can apply for replacement of their titles. That is after the expiry of the 90 days by using Form RL 97. Chair, with the closure of these records, then it means once this period lapses, we have to comply with any blocks that are already gazetted with the new registration to migrate to the new land registration regime. The announcement, Chair, for this purpose on the radio is to cover and to make sure that we are able to reach as many landowners and as many Kenyans as possible. The surrender will entail that the landowner returns the original title, then has to have a copy of the ID or a passport, a KRA PIN, and of course he has to complete Form RLA 97. I want to say that this order, or the land registration order, or introducing the units, revoked the land registration, the registration land district order of 1981. Ideally meaning when that order was revoked, then we have to hasten and move to the new order because that is now the order that is in place. Because of time, I've tried to go as fast as I could on my presentation. And I want to say this in concluding remarks, that if I was to take what you call a takeaway in conclusion, it is that the creation of the land registration legal framework aligned to the Constitution of Kenya 2010. This is one thing, that the Constitution of Kenya 2010 required that we have to migrate the records. We have to rationalize. We have to consolidate. So that now is what actually means that we must have a unified form of registration, not in Nairobi, but throughout the country. Again, there is the aspect of land reforms in the land sector. Why the land reforms is because the previous regimes of registrations meant that the processes that were involved in each regime were actually distinct and different from each other. As surveyors, you can bear me witness that if you were to do a subdivision under Cap 300, what you needed to produce is the mutation. But if you were to go under Cap 281, then you needed to do a plan which we call famously a deed plan. And in this case, a deed plan will only have just that one single parcel. But now the new land regime allows us to have a cadastre where parcels are georeferenced, and this also takes care of sectional properties. As you are all aware, we never actualized the repealed Sectional Properties Act of 1987. What we did, we borrowed from the Land Transfer of Property Act of India of 1882, we coined it in with the Registration of Documents Act, and we created what we now famously call long-term leases for sectional properties, which actually are not in an addendum, I would say, were not anchored in law. In terms of emerging technologies, it will be difficult for us to have various regimes of registration and then when the rest of the world is going digital, and purport that we will be able to automate because systems accept certain chains of command. And with now the emerging technologies, then we have to move with speed, migrate to the conversion so that we are all able to share from or be able to harness what technology is bringing on board. Of course, there is an issue again of what we call good land governance. We come from the habit of manual documents where they are dated, they are lost. And now with the new regime, which allows us to use technology, then it is giving us a way of actually making us who are players in the land sector and as a ministry, now that we have to use for us to be able to undo the underlying problems that we have faced over years. In terms of ease of doing business, I think this is another takeaway for me, that in the current trend, investors both international and local, they would want to invest where they can see their returns. In one of our ratings, we were rated that it can take up to 73 weeks to do a transaction relating to land from the point of surveying that land to the point of registration. And you surveyors who have been in this field know that there are some which even take more than those days, actually months, probably years. Then that means in terms of ease of doing business, we are not doing well. Therefore, there is need for us to compete fairly with the rest of the world. And my conclusion, finally, my last word could be the right to property of ownership, which is guaranteed now under the new constitution, and giving that guarantee to the property owners is very key. That's why particularly we have gone away to come up with the new Sectional Properties Act, which will be able to guarantee the owners of those sectional units that they can have a title they can take and smile in the name of a certificate of lease to the bank. Ideally, the documents that we created, they were only giving us a right at the behest of the resort of those apartments. With that, Chair, I want to say thank you for giving me an opportunity to share. We will be willing to listen. I'm still seeing that I don't know from that side, I don't know whether you were getting me. I could still have challenges, but I hope we will be able to harness on technology and be able to have even some of these teething problems we have created. Thank you. What are you hearing?
Yeah.
Chair, we will wish now to in case you have issues. I know I want to bring in my colleague Nashara, who will talk about also issues in terms of the cadastre and the issue on survey. If you allow me, we could wish to know that you are hearing us, because sometimes here we are having this technology challenge. Please, let's, now I want to bring in my colleague Nashara.
Okay, sorry, Nyandoro, we had you loud and clear. It's only that now you are not able to benefit from the projected presentation.
Yes.
And I was requesting that maybe if you could send it to the Secretariat.
Yes.
To Robert, then Robert can be able to share with us, so that at least, because there's a lot of important things that you've mentioned, and some of them I think we were not able to capture quite well. And I think if it's written down in your presentation, then I think members can benefit quite a lot. Now, before we go to your colleague to do the presentation,
yes.
Mr. Nanzala, would you allow us to just have a small question and answer session, especially on what you have presented, so that we see how members have, internalized what you've presented, and also because there are some other questions that people had sent, which I'd want to just read out. I'll summarize them because most of them are almost the same thing, and people are basically, most of the questions are on the implementation of this conversion and the effect of the current title. You've clearly explained the process, the justification from the legal point of view, the constitution, to how the law changed up to the point where we had the 12th and then the unit order of 2017.
Okay. Yes. Chair, you are going off. I can't hear you.
with titles. And of course, some of us also in the banking financial institution. So you see, the people are really keen on the effect of this registration. For example, when you start with the financial institutions, people who have mortgaged their property and who the bank now keeps custody of the said titles. Okay, so what happens to that? Does the bank, as the holder of the title, because they have charged it, present the title to the ministry, or is it the owner who goes to the bank? And of course, now the registration of the charge is done afresh. So people want to understand that. And then also, which is very important, is where there is a dispute in ownership, a caution, or do you halt the process for that particular title, or do you just do it with the pending dispute between the parties, and all those things. There's also another pertinent issue about especially leasehold, where a land rent is charged. And as you're aware, most of the leasehold, especially in Nairobi, the land rent has not changed for quite a while. So people, of course, are paying very low rates. So with this new registration regime, and they'll be getting new title, are you also going to do a revaluation of or reassessment of the land rents, and as such, either increase or reduce the land rent in the new title, which is very, very important. Are you also going to, in this implementation, going to include also the county governments to this particular title? And most of the time, you'll find people have arrears. So if somebody has not cleared his arrears with, say, for example, the county government of Nairobi, then what happens with the new title? Will they now be expected to clear that before they get the new title? Or what will exactly happen in that particular case? And then there's the issue of, when you talk about the dispute of titles, the biggest issue in Mombasa for squatters, what happens to people who are claiming ownership of land where they have been living and where they have been squatters? How do you then come up, or how do you then do new titles for such places? In addition to the financing institution, we also have other parties. Say, for example, the other government agencies that have interests in some titles. Say, for example, the EACC, DCI, who are doing investigation on some of these titles that have issues. Then what happens when you're issuing new titles? Is the record expunged, or you have a mechanism of how you're going to cover that? And there's, as in the beginning of your presentation, how in 1982 RLA was supposedly supposed to come and salvage the situation that was there then, the registration regime. And I think over the years, like about 50 years, the strategy was not 100% implemented. So how confident are you that this time around, when you're implementing this conversion, what is your projection for success rate, and how long do you think that will take? Will it take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? Because you're talking about the whole country. We started with Nairobi. How will then now that merge, and how long does that take to effect? I'm just asking these questions because they came to us. So as we also allow you to answer that, I I think your concentration should be on the exact implementation so that members understand when we go back and we are talking to the public, because there's a lot of fear and anxiety at the moment. A lot of fear and anxiety that people have misunderstood this process, that they think their titles are being taken away, and they don't really believe that that the process might, it might be affected by, things like corruption, and their titles might get lost along the way. So how do you deal with these fears and, mistrust from the public, and to be able to, make people understand that this particular process is there because it's a legal, constitutional requirement, and it does not in any way affect, or their titles are going to be secure as they come out as new titles with new registration numbers. So at the onset, I want you to tackle that, and then later on, now you can invite your colleague to do to very quickly talk about the cadastre, and then now we can open up and we can take a few questions from our members.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. If I summarized your questions, they are in total 8. And in these 8 questions, they range from issues of collaterals to the point of fear in the people that they will lose their land. Allow me, first of all, to say, when you add the CS speech, our cabinet secretary, or let's say it, and that is the position that we already have a conversion manual, which is at 0 draft. So it's not something we can now at this moment say. That manual will actually give us and allay some of the fears you have raised, particularly when we will talk about how do I surrender, what do I need to check, what is required in terms of the timeline, how long will it take for me to get my new title. This will be answered in the manual. That said and done, I will, at the right time, I will invite my land secretary to talk about the issue of squatters, because the issue of squatters is not new in this country, and it has been there, particularly, as you said, in the coastal region. So allow me to start with the first question you asked about we have properties held in the banks, where we have mortgages. And probably I could also even add to this your point, we have also titles which have been deposited in our courts as security, so that I can answer that together, we don't leave a gap. From where I stand and what we are doing, it will be not easier to say that the banks have to give the titles to the owners, then to present what if they run away with the titles. We have taken that into account, and already we will be engaging the banks to give us the mortgages that are registered in their various banks. In this regard, what we are expecting is that the client will go to the bank, fill the necessary documents, the one I said from RR 97, put the photographs, all the necessary documents required to execute the document. And once the document is executed, then the bank can actually forward it to us, and upon the registration, the same document, the title will be returned to the bank. However, in that question, you raised something. Will we be having issues like replacement charges? Leading from the law, we are supposed to migrate to the new land registration regime upon conversion with whatever we call it the subsisting entries. Subsisting entries here, I mean, where we have like ownership particulars, where we have existing mortgages. I don't see an issue where we are likely to say that we do password discharge and then replacement charge. Because the law clearly says, and the order is very clear, if you go to the regulations, that the land registration unit regulation, it is very clear that we will have to transfer, if I use it in more simple terms, we will have to transfer the subsisting to the new title. Let me use again that word, because when we say new regime, sometimes we are not getting what new regime are we talking about. We will transfer them to the new register that we are going to create. That is actually what is in the spirit
Hello, Mr. Nyandoro, we seem to have lost you. Hello, Nyandoro, we seem to have lost you. I don't know that it's just me or it's everyone else.
Okay, sorry, Chair.
Yeah, we can see you now.
I was muted from probably, yes. So
sorry, yeah.
if I could continue, Chair, we were saying in terms of those, whatever we could call the rights and the liabilities, they will actually transit to the new register. So in case the person is not who presents the title, I could rather have who should execute the document, who is the owner, and then who presents now is the person who is the custodian. The same way will happen where we have documents that have been given as security in our courts. The owners will execute those documents, forward to them to the courts, and the court will present them to us. Because if the court surrender these documents, the owners might never take them back, and probably the people who have actually had those titles placed as security for bail, they might decide to jump bail. And this is not what we are looking forward as a ministry. That's why we are saying it depends who has the title, and then that is at the point. And remember also at this point, Chair, that there are cases where we are talking of succession issues that will come in. In terms of disputed properties, I don't know whether in this are we talking about disputes in court but if I look at disputes in general, the issue of disputed ownership, where we have court orders specifically directing that there should be no any dealing in that property. So those titles we cannot even migrate. They will have to wait because the court has given clear directions that there will be no dealings. And in my understanding, no dealings, and us as the ministry, including the conversion process. But where the orders have been just registered and there is a case going and it has not precluded from any dealing, then remember the new conversion does not mean that we cannot have subsequent orders nullifying either ownership or actually giving either the chief land registrar or the ministry other directions on what to be contained. And this we respect that we will allow the other government bodies and agencies to carry out their part in terms of what is under investigation. What is under investigation is under investigation. We cannot call it the investigation as a cast on stone that we say since it is under investigation, so we cannot migrate. As we speak, I said we have developed the cadastral of Nairobi. That means already all parcels in Nairobi, ideally, already have new numbers. So the issue that about ownership is an issue that can be handled at another level, if I use that word, when now it comes to issuance of the title, because there is an issue ongoing, we cannot be able to issue a title when you know you have a litigation with another person in court and the issue around the property is on disputed ownership. But let's also understand there are other disputes which are not necessarily relating to ownership. So we will need to weigh what kind of dispute we will be handling. But I can tell you where we have specific orders, we will comply with the orders. In your number 3, I could say number 3 and 4, where you talked about land rent, allow me to combine with the county governments about rates. And let me say that conversion is not based on land and rates. Remember, we are also converting freehold properties. As we are doing this, it is not only leasehold properties. Ideally, the issue of rent is an issue that can be revised by the government when need arises or as the government feels fit. But we cannot say that since we are doing now conversion, we will use it as a basis to give you new rents. Remember, the order was very clear. We will move to the new register with the subsisting rights. And these rights, among them is what is the prescribed there as the tenure. If the property was resold, you get a leasehold. If it was freehold, you get freehold. We cannot use the conversion now to deny people and tell them now since we are converting, it will be free, it will be resold. No. In the same way, we will not be able at this point to say that we are carrying out an exercise of reviewing all the rents and the rates. The issue of rents, even if we migrated to the new regime, remember, these are the liabilities that we migrate along. So we will not say that we have migrated, we have given you a title, and you are not going to pay the outstanding rent and the rate. But we will not use the conversion as a basis to make people come and pay. Allow me at this point to invite my land secretary to probably say a word or two about the issue of where you are saying squatters in properties, particularly in Mombasa, and you are wondering how these ones will be converted before I will come up to cap 300 and then wrap it off. Yeah. Chair, can somebody unmute my land secretary, please?
Yeah, Robert, please assist.
Esther, if you could please unmute.
It's not muted.
Just let it proceed. Let me proceed.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
We've lost you a bit.
This one has also been unmuted.
Okay. Now we can hear you. We can hear you and we can see you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
So the issue of squatters in this country has been with us for a very long time. And the government has all along had an issue of addressing this matter. When we came up with these laws, and I'm glad there was enough public participation, and we also included the professional bodies like ISK, LSK, and others. The Land Act 2012 has put up the procedure on addressing the issue of squatters. So have the regulation. The procedure is very clear. But when it comes to matters of conversion and the titling, and also the cadastre will capture this land as is because it does not affect the map. So we shall be able to put that on the cadastre. We also have the data and the concerning ownership and all that. We are saying we are relying on the documents we have, the manual records, to come up with the cadastre and the end limbs. So what we shall do, if this land is squatted, and I'm sure we shall come across this because from Nairobi, we shall go to the countries, to the countryside and the counties. We have to cover all the counties. We shall invoke those regulations. You know very well those who have been with us and those who have been involved in settlement, the issue, the procedure for handling squatters is done at the county level. That is on site where those squatters are. The committee is chaired by the county commissioner. We have a secretary, and the membership of this committee is usually drawn from the local community, where we also engage, we consider people with disability and the youth. So the committee is properly constituted as per the law. These are the committees we shall use because we know they have very good knowledge and they are local and we trust the elders. They will handle the issue of these squatters as per the law and per the regulations so that we can address this matter. The government is very much committed to ensure that we abide by the law and we address these matters as per the law. So we should not worry about squatted land because there is a law that prescribes how we should deal with this matter. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I think most of the questions have been addressed, and even some that I anticipated to ask have also been covered by yourself. And thank you for that. Thank you for confirming that this is it's merely a conversion, and all the rights and liabilities will move to the new titles. And then again, what was also important, all the other stakeholders, including financial institutions, whoever holds the title is the one who will present it will surrender it. Though registered owner is the one who's going to fill the form that I think you call LR16.
97.
LR97.
Yeah.
And then the person who holds it will take it to the ministry will surrender it to the ministry for changing. And then we also talked about the blocks that have been gazetted are 19. Was there a specific reason why you chose 19, or is it why 19? Why begin with 19 and not 30 or 5? So was there a specific reason for that? And this covers majorly which areas? If you just update us on that, and then now you can proceed to the next presenter as and then we'll take in more questions after that.
Thank you, Chair. I think we highlighted in our next presenter's presentation.
Okay.
I in the Gazette notice that was done on 30th December.
Yes.
After that, we have done subsequent gazettements.
Which dates?
Why we are doing block by block, because you cannot do what I might call an omnibus or a movers. We are going and checking block by block, and as you realize, the current law requires that these blocks should be aligned. So among those blocks, as you are also aware, we have titles which were under various regimes of registration. So that's why we had to deal a block by block, and then in the process, the blocks we have cleaned are the blocks that we press, we take forward for gazettement. This is an ongoing process, because even when we have had our cadastre, you know, there is an issue of where we call double check or counter checking. But yes, this is an issue that my colleague in his presentation is going to align. We have actually, is going to give you even the precise now as of current, we are the blocks that we have done. Again, we will even tell you precisely how many blocks now we have created for Nairobi, because we now have the blocks. Yes. Then, if you allow me, there is something you asked about. We were not able to actualize RRA properly, and it took us so long. How long do we think we are going to take in this conversion? Yes. My take care on this is that number one, let us understand there is what I might call, what I first want to call about not only this. Remember, there was at one point the government asked that all parcels within municipalities and the municipal councils convert to RRA, but it was meant on a voluntary basis. So if the owner never came up, so they will still retain their old regime. But in this one, there will be what I call reasonable timelines. And that will enable to allow us also be able to handle, because if we told people in Nairobi, for example, which has over 200,000 titles that actually come on this day to surrender your titles, us as a ministry, we may not have the capacity to handle, or as a registry, to handle that number of people or number of parcels. So there will be, in our manual, we will actually be able to tell you even how this is going to happen. It will go block by block in terms of the surrender. We will again, even some blocks which are very huge, we will say how many in what day, and we shall be informing members of public board in our newspapers and maybe through our radio stations, so that we are able actually to reach as many people as possible. So the parameters of timeline, I cannot tell you now that we have given ourselves 3 months or a year, because again, remember, as a ministry, we are also building what we call trust. How we handle the first surrender will actually determine the rest of the exercise. But I think in terms of our manual, what we are preparing now, we are already coming out. I don't want to say until the manual is ready. We are already laying modalities that out will restore confidence that the person who brings her title, he will not tomorrow come and be told your title cannot be traced. That's one thing. How can that person go home comfortably knowing that either I have a new title or tomorrow I'm getting my new title? I'm not intending just to, because the manual is at 0 draft, it will be unfair for me now to allude to what is in that manual. I think in terms of that, we are very clear, and allow me to repeat what my RAND secretary has even alluded in the both ACS speech and what he said. Our exercise is not about looking to take people's land. That is not the intention of the government and the ministry. The intention of the government and the ministry is clear that we have actually to align our records with the new applicable laws. We have to live with the realities of technology. And in this case, if somebody will not find his record either in the cadastre or in the conversion, then that person already, there is a mechanism provided both under the land registration unit order of 2017 and also our applicable laws on how he could actually lodge his complaint, and there will be an explanation as to what is happening. I think we are all Kenyans, you know, sometimes you come to our offices to look for a search, and for one reason or another, we cannot find your file. There will be those cases where we don't have a file, and we might require the owner to come to an indemnity and the like. So for me, at this point, if you allow me, and I think I've now covered the issues that you had before me, and the rest, there is anything that can come after this, you allow my colleague to do the presentation. That will give you a clear indication of what we are doing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nyandoro. I think we can welcome Mr. Joseph Nyanzala, who is the Assistant Director, Department of Survey, Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning, so that he can do his presentation. After that, then we can have a small plenary before we close.
Can you hear me? Chair, hello? Hello, Chair.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you, Mr. Yes, Mr.
Request the Secretariat to unmute in answer. We are trying, and this end is not able to come on.
Robert? Robert, please assist. Hello, Robert.
Yeah, we have a problem around. Let me get in my PC to proceed so that we save time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Are you able to do you have a presentation you can share with us?
Okay, Chair and members, am I being heard?
Yes, you can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, let me proceed. Chair and members, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Now, allow me, as the earlier presenter, to share my, of course, we have heard your sentiments, members, but allow us to share our slides later on.
Okay.
Now, starting off, my presentation will cover the cadastre, what we have done so far, the conversion process, and then the consequences of both the cadastre and the conversion to us surveyors. Now, in the cadastre, what we have in place covers the land registration unit known as Nairobi City County. So the area of coverage of the cadastre that is existing is within Nairobi City County, which covers both, now for surveyors, they are aware of that, both the fixed surveys and the general surveys, what we are calling the Dagoretti area, the general boundary area. Now for the fixed surveys, we have both the LR numbers and the parcel numbers. So in the cadastre, all the parcels within Nairobi have been captured. And when we talk of general boundary, that brings in mind the issue of georeferencing, which I'll also mention later on. But for now, it's good to know that all the parcels in Nairobi have been captured, vectorized. And we have data both for the vector data and the supporting documentation. That's the analog maps that have been now scanned, and they are supporting the cadastre. Two, this cadastre is in layers for your information. The cadastre is in layers where we have had a parcel. For example, an LR number has been subdivided. The earlier survey data is there, but is as existing as old survey data. And then that means then we have an active layer that depicts the current status of the parcels for all the parcels in Nairobi. The general boundary area, how we have been able to achieve the georeferencing. We have done that using, by use of satellite imagery, high resolution satellite imagery. By that, we have been able to achieve, or rather assign, the spatial information to our, what we are calling registry index maps for the Dagoretti area. So all the parcels have georeferencing information as required by law. And the reason that, or rather the two reasons that are driving us to carry out this process are two, majorly two. There could be others, but for us, they are majorly two. One, there is the requirement of the law that we transit from the old system to the new system. And then two, that we support business transactions, ease of doing business. And practice has shown that the technological platform supports ease of doing business. Those are the two reasons that are driving our motivation. Now, coming to the conversion process. First on, I have to admit that the document we are using for registration here, we are proposing to use for land registration here, will still be the registry index map. So that's the document we are still using for land registration. But then that document is derived from the cadastral map, which is supported in the Land Registration Act 2012. Of course, I'm aware the Survey Act is still going on, as many of you are also aware. The review of the Survey Act is ongoing at the moment, where the Institution of Surveyors is also a major player. So the issue of regulations, when it comes up, the look of the cadastral map, the look of the registration document, we will be requesting that we adopt the land registry, the registry index map as the registration document, because that's what we are assuming to be the registration document at the moment. Now, on the conversion process, you must be aware that Nairobi initially was registered, or rather land under Nairobi was registered under various acts, where we had the parcel identifiers, land registration numbers, and parcel numbers. We are required to transit to a system where land registration is parcel identification is a parcel number, and that's why we are doing the conversion. We are now converting from land registration numbers to parcel numbers. And that only covers the areas where conversion had not been done previously. And that brings us now to the number of blocks. How many blocks? There was a question to that effect. How many blocks do we have in place? Recall, initially for an area to be converted, and the previous presenter alluded to it or talked about it, it was a request, it's a voluntary request. Somebody had to request for the conversion to be carried out. But now it has to be uniform. All parcels have to be, or rather all lands in Nairobi have to be identified by a parcel number, actually in the country, by a parcel number, not an LR number. So what we have done, the areas that had already been converted, those ones we are not converting them because they already meet the requirements of the law. So in that regard, we have areas that we will not be touching in this conversion. We have existing blocks, 141. Those ones, we are not touching them. Then we had areas where members of or owners of those parcels had requested for conversion, but for some reason, they didn't go ahead and register those areas. We are calling them dormant blocks. So if you recall, the first gazettement that Mr. Nyandoro talked about of the 19 blocks covered those areas, what we're calling existing but dormant blocks. They were converted, yes, but no registration was carried out. So those 19 blocks, they are the ones that were converted initially, and they cover what we are calling existing but dormant blocks. But as of now, they are active now that they have been published. Now, the rest of the Nairobi area is covered by 80 blocks. These are purely areas, parcels of land identified by LR numbers. There are 80 in number, and they are the ones that the current conversion is targeting. So far, we have done 65 blocks, 65 of them, which means we are remaining with 15 to make a total number of 80. Now, the total number of blocks in Nairobi, because now that will be the next question. Initially, we were working with the 250 blocks, but with time, while we are working with this data, we have come to merge some, and the number has come down to 243. So at the end of the day, the total number of blocks we'll be having will be 243. The reason for merging, or rather the reasons for merging, are various. I'll maybe list two. One of them, we found out that during our working, there were island blocks. You find that there's a small block within a larger area. So in such an instance, we merged the small block into the larger block. Another instance would be, we found out that, and this one also affected some of the existing blocks. We found out that some areas were registered, or rather published. Some names were published twice. I'll give an instance. Block 25, Nairobi block 25. You find it's appearing twice. There's block 25 in one area and another Nairobi block 25 in a different location altogether. In such an instance, we renamed the block, one of the blocks. I won't go into the reasons for renaming. But in such an instance, we are renaming to remove the duplication. And yeah, that's the extent that we have done so far. It involves a lot of checking. That's why it's a bit slow, to be sure that no parcel has been left out. Nobody's holding a title that is not included in the blocks that we are having. I acknowledge we have had some complaints so far on what we have done, but I would urge the members, like in the CS report, she gave a very good outline on what should be done and when an issue should be raised. For example, launching and consideration of complaints. It comes after the first three processes: preparation of the cadastral map, publication of the cadastral maps and registration documents, and then notice for registration for the opening of the new register. After those three processes, that's when we'll have the launching of and consideration of complaints. So we request that, yes, there could be some mistakes. The two earlier presenters have said our intention is not to inherit anybody who is holding land in, rather rights to land in Nairobi. But please hold your horses until that time, and it will come. We will advertise when we'll be receiving those complaints to address the issues. Now, on consequences, I'm a little bit rushing because I know that our timelines are almost up. On consequences, I'll start with the consequences of the cadastre. One of the consequences is that the surveyors now, a timeline will be publicized, will be required henceforth to be presenting their work digitally. Operations henceforth will be digital. It won't be the normal process where we are required to provide a hard copy, what we normally call a computation file. So at the moment the cadastre is ready, what we are working on with our partners is how we can be receiving survey work digitally, not the normal way where you are required to hand in a hard copy file. So that will be communicated, but it is being put in place. So that's one of the consequences. Two, on georeferencing, I've told you what we have done in Nairobi. It may not be adequate to you members, but we have in place a pilot program to carry out georeferencing of particularly what we are calling adjudication, the resultant adjudicated areas, registration areas, 10 of them covering the whole country, and it's meant to take place this financial year. So we'll go out, do the georeferencing, and what we are going to do out there, members, is this. We are going to fix the outside boundary of that registration section. If I may take example in Kajiado, let's say Olokurto registration section. We are going to carry out a fixing survey of the perimeter of that section. We'll provide controls within the section along roads, public utilities, and we'll also pick enough ground control points to be able to georeference the registry index, or in this case, they are the preliminary index maps. And then thereafter, we can be able to georeference and require that any future surveys be carried out to fixed standards. That is our proposal. But after the pilot program, we will be coming to you for public engagement, for your views, so that we have an agreement on how to move forward on georeferencing. Two, you are aware, and the Institution of Surveyors is also involved, that the Survey Act is being amended. So it will take care of all those issues we talk about, the digital process. Those will be taken care of. The issue of you must be aware we also have in place a new datum for the country, what we are calling KENREF 2012. It will be taken care of during that review of the Act. So we are also asking that take your time, give your views, so that at the end of the day, we have a complete document that is catering to all our needs. And the Act is being reviewed alongside the amendments. So with those few remarks, I realize time is up. With those few remarks, maybe I'll welcome the chair, maybe to lead on so that we can have, if we have any clarifications, we can address them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph Gonzalo. Well, this is very technical. My background is in evaluation. Although I understood the entire of your presentation, I would like to, and I know this might be an ambush, I want to welcome one of my survey colleagues to assist me in asking the relevant questions as to the cadastre. So I don't know whether either Eric or Emily, you are in a position to assist me, or Erastus. I've just called 3 surveyors who also are also in the council with me, and who can at least answer, assist me in, asking the relevant questions. Or Mr. Sabatia. Mr. Sabatia, are you with us? So Robert, you can also assist me to unmute anyone who is ready, either Emily, Eric, Erastus, or Mr. Sabatia.
Eric is unmuted.
Okay, thank you very much, Eric.
All right, thanks, Chair Morris Omolo, for taking us through this, and good afternoon, members, and thank you, Anzala, for your presentation. I think you are straight to the point. It's quite clear what needs to be done, and I think you've explained very well the journey that is being proposed, and some of those proposals that you've put out across, especially the aspects of georeferencing the registration sections and providing control, which then the other surveys would actually be based on. And you've also touched on the aspect of electronic submission of the survey work, which is part of the work that was done last year in terms of formulating regulations to facilitate the electronic cadastre. Don't know whether Emily is on this call, or Sabati, I think we are calling out on that. But I see there are some questions that are being asked here with regard to the comments that you've made. You've said that PIDs for general boundaries. There's a question in terms of saying PIDs for general boundaries are based on aerial photos. Your referencing is done using high resolution satellite imagery. And for boundaries which have been tampered with and are not yet resolved, don't you think that those who tamper with boundaries will gain if current high resolution imageries are being used? So there is one question that is asking with regard to that issue on the use of high resolution imageries for those boundaries. There's another question that is talking about the parcel numbers, and is asking how the parcel numbers of the new regime will read after conversion. I think you can be able to respond to that. There is another question, but maybe not specifically related to your presentation, in terms of what would be the recourse if the title is not listed in the notice that has been published in the Gazette for 31st December 2020. Yeah, I think we can start with that as we are getting into more questions. Yeah, Anzala. Yeah, Robert, is Anzala able to proceed?
He's unmuted. I think you can proceed.
All right. Joseph? Joseph, is he hearing us? He's muted.
I hope he's hearing us.
As I can
Yeah.
see. Anzala, you're muted. Hello? We can't hear you. Joseph?
Just a moment, we'll get back. Hello, Chair, you can hear me?
Yeah. Yes, proceed.
So allow me to start. Allow me to start with the parcel numbers.
Yes, proceed.
Yeah, the parcel numbers will be provided according to the, based on the block. For example, if it is a Nairobi block 10, the parcel will be Nairobi block 10 / the area, we are including the area name, or rather the farm, if it were a farm, the farm name, for example, if it is Embakasi, it will be Nairobi. Let me use the example of Embakasi ranching. It will be Nairobi block 105 into brackets, Embakasi ranching, then / the parcel number. But then alongside that, we are also providing the conversion, how you are moving from the old number to the new number. So alongside that, we'd have the old number. For example, if it was an LR number, 209/18, you will have 209/18 as the old number. Then it will lead you, alongside it will be the new number, Nairobi block 105 into brackets, Embakasi ranching, then / now the parcel number. But then remember, the law requires us to have the numbers numbered consecutively. So it won't have any relationship with the LR number, because we need to have the numbers following each other sequentially, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that, so that you don't have a parcel number 1 being neighbored with parcel 250, 280, something like that. So we'll have to enforce that requirement of the law. That's on parcel numbers. Now, if the title is not published, we are doing all we can, of course, extracting from now the database what we have captured to be the parcels in Nairobi. We are doing our best so that every parcel number would be accounted for, would be published in the list that we will provide. But in an instance where it's missing altogether, I would like you to understand that an RIM is usually a living document. We can have it later amended as an additional, just the way we do it. And then we include an amendment panel giving the reasons why that addition is being made, if at all it's not a subdivision. So if a parcel for some reason is left out, there will be provision for it to be added later. Your first question, I'm sorry, I didn't get it. We got offline. Maybe if you may repeat, I got only two questions.
The question was about using high resolution imageries. The question was about using high resolution imageries for georeferencing of the preliminary index diagrams, so to speak, or in areas where adjudication has been done. The question was that if you use the high resolution images as they are now, and you are trying to, and there are certain areas that have boundary disputes, which are coming from, say, the 60s, how is that going to be resolved? In other words, the high resolution imagery as it is now does not show or reflect the ground as it was at that particular time when that boundary was created. Joseph?
Yeah, okay, Chair, through the chair. Yeah, that is noted. We acknowledge that challenge, but of course we have to realize the maps we have now, the maps we do have now, they reflect most of them reflect the current status, not as when the adjudication was carried out. So in some instances, for example, the Dagoret area we are talking about, the satellite images have really served as well. But we also acknowledge there could be that challenge. That's why we are sending out a team to pilot in 10 counties, or rather in 10 registration sections, to compare with the use of satellite imagery, to compare with the groundwork, and also with the use of,
Okay, fine. So I think, as you've said, it is something that is developing, and I think the areas need to be analyzed on a case-by-case basis, because in certain instances it may work, in other instances it may not work. Another question is that I think it's a statement that yourself, and also I think Nyandoro was kept on saying, you've been saying that you've completed the Nairobi Cadastre. I think that is misleading, because the cadastre has always existed. And I think what we should actually be talking is that you've completed digitizing the cadastre, because the cadastre, whether it is manual or whether it is digital, it still remains a cadastre. It does not actually change. There is a question that asks, why is it that Nairobi cannot be gazetted as a whole? Why do we have to gazette it in terms of blocks, especially if the cadastre for Nairobi has been fully digitized? Wouldn't it be easier for data management to then just gazette Nairobi as a whole and work within that kind of an environment? Joseph?
Okay, thank you, Chair. What we are gazetting, or rather what the minister is gazetting, are the registration sections within Nairobi, not the cadastre as an entity, but the registration sections within Nairobi. The law allows the land registrar, or rather allows for the creation of registration, sub-registration units within a gazetted registration unit, and that's what we are doing.
Okay. Yeah, I think that is noted. There is another question in terms of, was this conversion process really necessary? Who is actually going to pay for all this work? Wouldn't it have been easier to do the conversion as the land transactions are being undertaken? Because at the moment you're talking about, say, the banks holding land or holding title deeds and so on and so forth. You have land that maybe have issues with transactions, or certain processes like maybe succession have not been completed, and therefore requiring people to be able to surrender such kind of documents in order for them to be given new title documents would be difficult.
Yes, Chair. To be short and clear, yes.
Yeah, Joseph.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello. We can get you.
Hello.
We can get you. Proceed. Joseph.
Okay, Chair. I get your question. What we are actually. publishing are the registrations or the sub-registration sections within the Nairobi registration unit, not the cadastre as itself. So the registration of this, the publication of these units is necessary because we are doing a transformation or other conversion from what existed to what we want it to be now. That's what we are doing. And then too, on the cadastre, yes, it is true. The cadastre has been existing. So maybe let me just be clear on that. What we are talking about is the digitalization of the Nairobi land information. That's what we are talking about. But indeed, it is true the cadastre has been existing in whatever form. Thank you, Chair.
Well, the question that I was asking is, wouldn't it have been easier for the conversion process to be done based on transactions? Because as you and myself know that you're talking about technology, so it's very easy to have a digital cadastre, and you have you can be able to give out numbers to all those land parcels as per the requirement in terms of the law, and therefore then require that when you're doing transactions, in which case then the surrendering of the titles become necessary, then the new subdivisions or extension of lease or change of use or change of anything to do with the lease then results into that new title without requiring that the other old titles are invalidated. The point being that even now you still have title deeds that are coming in from the year as early as 1920 and so on and so forth. So wouldn't this conversion just lead to more confusion, make the process very expensive, and in the process would still be abandoned, and we are back to the same problem that we had before with the issue of the Registered Land Act?
Okay.
Hello, Chair. I wanted to be sure that we got the Eric's question clearly. Is he asking about issues of business continuity where we have some processes already ongoing when conversion is also taking place? Is that the question?
No, the question is generally the entire process of converting. Shouldn't the conversion be done by transaction instead of doing it systematically across by blocks? Wouldn't it be cheaper for the government in that case?
Ideally, if we took conversion to go that we wait for a transaction, then we will never finalize the issue, because as you could be aware, there are people who purchased properties and they have not done any transactions for a number of years. So in that case, it means such kind of property that owner might never come up at the end of the day. And we don't see this as more of a cost implication. The thing is, we have to have something kind of uniformity. I would ask you in the same manner that if somebody wanted for that person who has not come forward to carry a transaction and has a title, in this case in the old regime, if you were to ask it to issue a search, which regime are you going to use? Because ideally, the issue of why we are doing it in uniformity is because now, remember, we need actually to actualize the law that are in place. And you cannot, for example, let me say what Inazara said, within a certain section or a block, we cannot have a block which is mixed of those existing having the old numbers and the new numbers. Then it will repeat the logic of Article 68 of the Constitution and actually what is envisaged in other laws.
So from where we stand, I think a issue of doing it uniformity is the easier way to go.
Okay, thank you, Nyandoro, for that. There's another question that is asking, with reference to the completed cadastral map of Nairobi, what about parcels that have been subdivided on the ground? Owners have share certificates. The title is in the name of the original owner, and the subdivision plan has not been forwarded to Survey of Kenya, which means that the current ground situation is not captured in the cadastral map. And an example is given there of Lucky Summer area in Babadogo.
Hello, thank you, Chair. That is okay. We, of course, obviously, we can only make changes once we get the survey records to that effect. So those will remain the way, the status will remain the way it is as per the records that we have. Until they provide those records supporting the subdivision, we may not be able to have those changes reflected in the database. So it will remain the way it is. Unfortunate for that case.
Right. Thanks, Andrella, for that. There's another question in terms of saying that most titles based on RIM have boundary issues, and several of them are not accurate. And somebody has come across cases where the area on title is different from what is on title, is different from what is on the RIM. And how is the ministry going to harmonize this in the new regime? Are we going to issue new titles with new land areas?
Yes, Chair. We are aware of that. Not that we are proud of it, but the matter of georeferencing will address that when we go to the ground for collection of that information for georeferencing. It will also involve sample surveys of some of the parcels. In this case, I'm talking of sample. It may not be feasible to carry out a complete survey of a whole section, but where such a case is discovered, of course, we'll make changes. We'll make necessary changes to our maps and also to our registers. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Okay, maybe just one more question before we go on to back to Maurice. Have you considered funding Office of the Director of Survey with a view of subcontracting licensed surveyors to undertake the georeferencing of registration units countrywide? Perhaps this can help in bridging the capacity gap in a professional manner. The DOS will then carry out the aspect of supervision.
Yeah, Chair, we also acknowledge that the amount of work involved in this is monumental. So it's an ongoing discussion. A decision has not been made, but it's something that we are discussing.
Okay, fine.
Thank
and we are aware that let me just get this. The LSK has been involved in the development of a manual on the conversion. I think there's a question somebody is asking, is it too late for ISK to be involved or be incorporated into this particular aspect, bearing in mind that most of our members would be primarily engaged in this particular conversion process?
Okay, just a moment.
Thank you very much, Chairman and Eric. It's true, we are working on a document with the LSK, but this is just a draft and we shall involve all the players. There will also be public participation. So we shall subject this document to public participation, and we shall also include all the other professionals in actually coming up with the final document. So be assured of that. There is also, Chairman, I will digress a bit, because there is somebody who asked how we shall deal with confidence issues in the conversion. The way we are handling this issue is through stakeholder participation. And one of the forums, this kind of forums we are having here, is one of our confidence builders. And we shall continue talking together, all of us, so that we comply with the law. So when it comes to confidence issues,
we expect to all understand, so that we can the implementation will be easier for us. I also don't know whether I got it right about the documents that we are receiving as we go on with the conversion, but I think my brother Mr. Nyandoro has talked about that. Sorry, there's some noise coming from the background, but what we are doing is that we have not stopped any business from going on. We have a team that is dealing with business that is coming in, and we are handling it as it comes. So there is no business that has stopped because we are doing conversion, or because we are converting we are doing conversion, or because we are building a cadastre. We are trying as much as possible to ensure landowners are being served as much as we can. Thank you very much.
Right,
Eric,
thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Ogega, for your response. We've taken note of that. Let me just hand over back to Boris. Boris Omolo.
Thank you very much, Eric, and apologies again for the ambush. But you see, you are better suited than myself when it comes to matters of survey and cadastre. I think we have been able to handle a multiple of questions from that have been asked before, that have been asked currently in the chats, and also on the YouTube platform. And all of them have been summarized in one way or another, and I think they have been addressed quite sufficiently. And the presenters, led by Madam Esther, have really tried to give us what the current state is, and they were forthwith to say that one or two things are still pending, and that they have also promised that there's going to be a lot of public participation and involvement of ISK, so that as we continue this process, then the professionals' input is put in place, and we are able to advise the public who we serve quite well. I know there might be some other specific questions that maybe have not been addressed, but all these questions, again, we will still send them to the presenters. And if there's anyone that has not been addressed, then it can be done later on. And also looking by the interest that this has generated, Madam Ogega, we've been able to, we registered about 1,700 people who are interested in participating in this. These are our members, and I think by now maybe they've gotten to 2,000. Although this platform was able to just allow about 1,000 people. So currently the participant, of course, at some point there were 900 and something, but of course now, because it's going towards the end, about 600, which means that if possible, we might be forced to, not necessarily forced, but it would be wise to organize another seminar, maybe at a later date, after a month or so, just to be able to keep the conversation going and to understand all these steps that you're taking, because we'll also be helping you to inform the public of the process that is going, because we are the first people they come to when they're dealing with issues related to survey, to issues relating to valuation, charges from the banks, issues to do with land administration, those, all those stakeholders that we deal with. I'd like to thank you very much, Mr. David Nyandoro, for the presentation that you did. I'd also like to thank Joseph, who made a lot of matters clear, especially relating to the cadastre. Thank you very much. At this point, allow me to welcome our president, Mr. Abraham Samoei, who is going to give his final remarks. And then we can, because I can see you are supposed to have finished by one, it's now 1:45. Then after that, we'll be able to conclude. Mr. President.
Thank you, Chair. I must congratulate you first for a very well-moderated session. I think most of us have not realized that time has really gone. It's almost 3 hours into the session. But I think it was a quite informative and well-moderated session. I also want to thank Nyandoro, Esther, and Nanzala for very good presentations. I think many of us had a lot of questions when we came in, and we've had those addressed, but I know there are very many more questions that we have. Unfortunately, we were doing it virtually, so we don't have a chance to engage them after this session. But I think we can collect the questions and send it to them so they can answer, and maybe we can post them so that if those questions are grouped together, because I could see some of them are similar or addressing a similar issue. If they are grouped together, they are answered and circulated, and maybe even further questions. I think that said, I want to thank the Ministry of Lands for availing time to go with us through these title conversions. It's a very, it's a matter that is attracting a lot of public interest because of what it means in the land sector. ISK has been at the forefront in championing and encouraging reforms so that to enable increase in access, security of rights, and improvement of the land markets. So this is a step in the right direction. I know the challenges that you are facing now is you are in a live situation where transactions are happening, things are moving as normal, and you have to do some reforms. So you have our support, and we really look forward that as a country, we can be in one registration regime. That way, property transactions will be made easier, more secure, and transparent. I think a big win is where we are now having the RIM as a base for registration as opposed to the deed plan. We all know the challenges of the deed plan. So I think with the RIM, and now we are going digital, that would enhance security of title. When I speak to many of my clients, they are suffering what they call a confidence crisis. And I'm happy that the ministry had identified why the challenge of the rollout of this process is the confidence the general population has on the conversion. But I think when I look at it, where this trust issue came about is when you started having misplaced files. When somebody goes for a search or transaction and they are told your file cannot be found, and then you tell them to bring their title so that you can convert, of course they would worry, what if it disappears? And we know many Kenyans, the title is what they hold very dear. So if they don't have possession of it and they don't know what will happen next, that is what is making Kenyans a bit apprehensive about this process. But I think if we are able to provide a clear framework on how the application and conversion would happen, I think that would go a long way in assurance. Perhaps we would have maybe completed the digitization process, the NLIMS, where we have NLIMS as a platform before this happens, because if everything is happening electronically, perhaps it would have been easier. But I know there are very important programs that the ministry wants to do. So perhaps, Esther, as you go back and your team, is to fast track the NLIMS so that the conversion process becomes a bit easier. I think my comment also would be, I've heard that we have completed digitization of the Nairobi Cadastral and maybe other parts of the country. if this can be made publicly available and people can download. Sometimes it's a bit challenging to go to the registry, to the Survey of Kenya to buy a physical map. So if we already have all this electronically, perhaps we should have it uploaded and we can have it downloaded. But that said, I think you've answered many of our questions. And it's good that you're engaging professionals, because when I look at the number of people these professionals deal with and the questions they are asked, they are able to be your ambassadors in saying we are on the right path to reforming the land sector. And secondly, the questions they are asking are the same questions that the general population is asking. So more engagements, I think, would go a long way in ensuring that we have a successful rollout. So I think my comments are well done, and we hope to continue engaging. And thank you very much. So over to you, Maurice.
Thank you very much, President. I think, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the close of the webinar. I'm sure we've taken home a lot of information that you need to go and sit down and just ruminate over. But let us be, as you know, most of these people are members. Like, for example, Lester is an SK member, very proud to be. And then I know people have asked me where my video is. The machine that I'm currently using does not support the video, so apologies. But I know most of you know me, so my video you'll not be able to see me. But anyway, I think the presentation has been done quite well. The issues that were coming out have been articulated very well, and I think we've taken home a lot of information. The presentation that were done will be sent to the Secretariat, and then the Secretariat will be able to share with the members so that you can go and do your own reading of the same. Otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, including our presenters, Mr. David Jandoro, the Chief Land Registrar, Esther Ogega, Land Secretary, Joseph Nzala, Assistant Director, Department of Survey, the Secretariat, the Council, and the members. Thank you very much for attending this seminar. Robert will see us off with a word of prayer, and then we can all log out at our pleasure. I have been your moderator. My name is Maurice Omola. I'm the current Education and Research Committee Chair. Robert, thank you.
Thank you, Maurice. Let's all believe and pray. Our loving Father, we come before you again this hour. Thank you for being with us even as we started this session until now we have finalized. Thank you for the various issues that we've been able to discuss. We ask, Lord, that you may always give us wisdom and knowledge so that we may be able to serve the public. Be with each and every one of us even as we discuss until we meet another time. This we pray thanksgiving in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, thank you, and bye-bye to all.